Hi, and welcome back. My name is Robert Shelton, and I'm a seminarian for the Archdiocese of San Antonio, and we just want to welcome you all back here in our continuation of the formation series. We're talking about, what it means to be a seminarian, and how are we trained, how are we formed. And today I'm joined by some of my brothers in formation, Jordan and David, both seminarians in the Archdiocese of San Antonio, and we're really excited to have you here. We're excited to be here, and we're excited to explain to you what being a pastor is, what pastoral formation is. That's the topic of today's podcast, is pastoral formation. And just like a lot of things in church, we have fancy words for everything, right? We have, sometimes I don't want to use the word archaic, but, we have very, some, I don't, again, not legalistic, but we have these big terms to describe very specific things. And one thing you hear a lot about with priests is being a pastor, right? You're a pastor of a parish. And, what does that mean? What does being a pastor mean? What is pastoral care? What is pastoral formation? What does it mean to us as seminarians, and what does it mean to us as future priests? So, I don't know, David, you want to start that one off? And you're smarter than me, so maybe explain that to the good folks watching today, and we'll start off with that.
All right, I'll take a stab. I think pastoral, like you said, it comes from that word pastor, and I think it's just a word that means shepherd. Like Jesus is the good shepherd, and we're all trying to be formed to be shepherds like him. So I think that's what really our pastoral formation is. It's learning to be a minister, a pastor, a shepherd in the body of Christ, a leader who can lead others to the chief shepherd. I think really that's the bottom line about pastoral. So you can talk about pastoral care. That means providing care, listening, attention to people as you're trying to point them to Jesus. I really think that's the bottom line with pastoral.
That's definitely true. And like being a pastor, one of those things that you're called to as being a pastor is being close to the sheep. And so kind of drawing upon that imagery from the Bible and from Scripture, a pastor and his sheep. And so we hear about this, Pope Francis has kind of shared with us, a pastor is called to smell like his sheep.
Yeah.
And so there implies kind of like that heart-to-heart, that intimate contact with those that he's called to serve, and also those that he's called to love.
Absolutely. I think y'all both hit on, what it is in its foundation about being a pastor, being a priest, is that, care for the flock. And I think it, just to do a little stab at history, I know y'all know how much I don't like history.
All right.
He hates history.
I hate history. I'm obsessed with history. And but I think what's interesting to know is that, in Christ's time, everyone was it was much more agricultural based, right? So when you explain a pastor, people had an intimate understanding of what that immediately meant, that a pastor is the shepherd, that they go out and fend off the wolves, they hand feed the sheep, they help them when they're giving birth, they keep them safe, keep them fed, they are with them in the winter. They actually, a lot of times people forget that animals, the barn used to be part of the house. So your animals literally would sleep with you and would keep you warm at night. And I think that's something, and I grew up in the country with ranches, right, but we don't use the word pastor anymore. We don't use the word pastor, right? We use ranching, we call it other things. But I think it has such a innate and beautiful imagery when you think about it, but being a pastor. But what does that mean for us as seminarians? I mean, I obviously don't think the seminary day we're not going out and shearing sheep and stuff anymore as much as I'd love to. But what does that mean for our training? I mean, y'all have much more experience, a little further information with me. I know y'all have completed your pastoral internships. Y'all have done numerous ministry assignments over the summer and during the school semester. So, I don't know, Jordan, you want to kick us off and talk about your internship experience?
Yeah,
or what it is?
Most definitely. So I was blessed to be able to go out to Del Rio, working with two communities out there, Our Lady of Guadalupe and St. Joseph's, and very close communities within 1.2 miles of each other, but definitely that differences of communities of what each pasture needs and the difference of sheep. And so when I was out there in Del Rio, I was able to see some of those different needs and concerns. So maybe at one parish there was a little bit more need of accompaniment, and so the presence of the priest at their different ministries and helping them in their times of difficulty. At the other parish, it was more leadership and liturgical, so leading them in liturgy, being present on holy hours, being present at adoration, being available for confession. And so I think bottom line, that year of pastoral formation, pastoral internship, kind of comes down to two words. One, availability, and two, gratitude for what you've been shown. So gratitude for the response of the sheep, but also that availability of being willing to go out of your comfort zone after having a long day in the office, or having pastoral visits, being available to those that are in need and in help.
So Jordan, you were out there in Del Rio for like a full school year then?
Correct, yes. So I was out there for about 9 months. Definitely a lifetime experience. I will forever remember the experience of Del Rio and the people out there in Del Rio. And I would say that they've definitely made an impact on my own vocation and of my own pastoral heart. Some of my parting words when I parted the community, I said that they themselves have written their names, their faces, who they were, what they did, what they didn't do, whether they know it or not or acknowledge it. They've written their experience of who they are as a human person, as a human individual, on my priestly vocation, on my pastoral vocation.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and while you were there, I was at a different parish for the 9 months as well.
Right.
I spent my pastoral year at Holy Trinity over in Stone Oak, and it was really cool. I agree with Jordan. Like, I really enjoyed getting to work with the parish staff there. It was my first time like spending that much time in a parish doing ministry. So I really enjoyed meeting and working with the pastoral staff. They were super welcoming. The parishioners really made me feel like I have a second home. My home parish is St. Pius X over off Harry Wurzbach, but I definitely feel like now I have a second place I can call home too. And so it's good to have my home parish and now my pastoral year parish. And I think that most priests can say that they're like really special parishes for them, where they grew up and then where they got to spend like a full year doing ministry. So that was a really cool experience.
Yeah, it's something that I'm really looking forward to doing, because like I said, I'm about 2 years below y'all in formation. So I'm just entering theology 2, which is the second year of your graduate studies, and at the completion of that, I start our pastoral internship, which is basically a year off of school that we do, in which we spend nothing but the entire time in a parish,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's a beautiful experience. A lot of guys always talk about it with such joy and anticipation, how it's one of the greatest experiences they have when they're in seminary. It's similar to, like, for those watching, if you think like a doctor's residency period, right,
Mm-hmm.
where you're not yet a full doctor, you don't have the authority of a doctor, you don't have the right to necessarily practice being a doctor. So we're not priests yet, but we're in a parish full time, assisting the pastor, the priest, and administration and running things and whatever. And it is such a moment of growth, and I've seen it in both of you. I mean, both of y'all came back super changed, and it's a beautiful experience that I'm looking forward to.
Most definitely, and I think that's the purpose of a pastoral year. And so when we have our pastoral year in between Theology 2 and Theology 3 of our seminary formation, it's a year to get as many experiences as possible. So I know some of my formators and some of my mentors that I kept in touch with over the year, they encouraged me to do as much as I can, whether it be in the office, go for sick calls, go for house blessings, help lead liturgies, whatever it may be. They encourage those experiences to get out of our comfort zones and to kind of try and to be with the people and what it means to actually do that full time.
Yeah, it really gives you an opportunity to do things like that maybe you've only observed before. Like, you're still observing a lot, but now you get a little more experience at like leading in liturgies, maybe being MC for big liturgies, or even giving reflections at holy hours. So there's liturgical leadership. You get to do pastoral care with the staff, with parishioners, to a certain extent at least. And then there's a whole gamut of experiences. You get to work with the ministries of the parish, help the Knights of Columbus or other organizations run charitable drives. So it's a really big aspect of our pastoral formation as San Antonio seminarians. Obviously, it's not the whole thing, though, because pastoral formation during seminary, it's not like we just take a 1 year, but we actually do it throughout our school years. We usually have a ministry assignment as well during the school year. So it's not like we're full-time in a parish during that time, but we could be assigned to a parish or a ministry, such as, like, I've been at St. PJ's Children's Home, which is like an emergency children's shelter. I've done that during the school year. Like I said, you could be at a parish helping with faith formation. There's a lot of different opportunities, even during the school year, that we get to develop in our pastoral identity.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's something that Jordan mentioned before we started the show, that that our seminary and our school formation really emphasizes the pastoral element, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've noticed that myself, that amongst the seminarians here, especially for San Antonio, that no one has had the same pastoral ministerial experience where just by the nature of there's only so many available slots at a certain parish to help out or St. PJ's. But like for me, you know, I've gotten to work in nursing homes, caring and it was a hospice home. Some of these people were in their last months of life, and I got to work with children. I got to work in Life Teen. I got to work in youth ministry, and I got to work in different parishes over my summer assignments. Because each summer we do, when it's not your pastoral internship year, you go places like Mexico to learn Spanish or something. And so I just think it's something that you brought up, Jordan, that really is important. That, you know, because as a priest, we never know where we're going to be, right, or what situation we're walking into. So we have this wealth of experience, and I really liked how you brought up that in an internship, in a pastoral setting, it's about gaining those experiences and about learning how, you know, I not that I'm trying to equate people as sheep, you know, but like, you know, it's interesting to know how sheep react in different situations. So you get that wealth of, well, this worked at this parish, or this didn't work at this parish, or I wouldn't have done it that way. And I don't know if you all found the same thing, but it's through those ministerial settings that I've gained a wealth of resources and knowledge to fall back on when I'm, God willing, one day a priest.
Most definitely. I think those experiences that you experience, they're different in each time. So I was able to spend a summer at David, your parish, for some
St.
time.
Pius.
St. Pius, yeah.
Yes, St. Pius.
St. Pius, SPX.
Shout out to St. Pius.
I want to say I was there as well. If you're Jordan.
Yeah, so it was a little hard for Robert to come in my shadow.
You know what?
Just kidding. Love your brother.
I learned a lesson in humility.
He's not
that
kidding.
I can't grasp the greatness that is Jordan.
No.
I will never be as great as Jordan.
No.
Nor will I have as good a style.
See,
I wore a black collared shirt, and Jordan rocks. He's got nice, you know. It's Under Armour.
It's a Guayabera.
You know?
What are you talking about? It's a Guayabera.
I mean,
so
yeah, Guayabera.
Going back to my story with St. Pius. So kind of like David had kind of brought it up, that, you know, as a priest, you are called to leave kind of your home parish and your home flock. And so for me, being from New Braunfels, Holy Family is what I call as home. And so my family is there, all of those that I grew up with, and, you know, that fostered my vocation. But I shared with some of the parishioners at St. Pius and even the parishioners out at Del Rio on my pastoral year, how home can be not so much transferable, but pieces of home can be found throughout the Archdiocese. And so even though that, you know, New Braunfels is, you know, some distance away from San Antonio, St. Pius, Del Rio, all throughout the Archdiocese, those experiences kind of provide us with touchstones, with things that kind of touch us pastorally and touch us in our heart, reminding us of our calling and who we're called to serve. So I just wanted to share that.
Oh yes, but I think your analogy with touchstone is just, now you say it, I'm like, wow, that really is what some of these experiences are. Because I can think of all the parishes that I've been to, I feel so at home at all of them. I feel welcomed by the priest and the people, and same thing, you know, I go to your parish for Mass sometimes on Sundays, or I go to St. Luke's, and I don't know, David, have you experienced the same thing? And I mean, because you've also had some unique, being that you're staying for the military archdiocese as well, some, you know, even further afield than just the diocese.
Yeah, so I've gotten it's kind of cool. I can say that I've gotten to experience like other brother seminarians and from other dioceses that are co-sponsored for the military archdiocese, and now I can learn from their experiences. I get to see them on like a Labor Day weekend. We have like a Labor Day gathering of all the co-sponsored seminarians, and it's interesting to hear from them how they have pastoral formation in their programs at their seminaries. Like sometimes they have like teaching parish models, which I think is kind of like what we try to do with our pastoral year, but I think they're still trying to do it during the school year, unless they also, because not every diocese has a pastoral year for their seminarians. Like Jordan, I got to spend a summer at a parish, and that was at St. Gregory the Great, and that was also a really cool experience. I had a really good time, and like you said, you learn a lot by observing. Like you're observing the priests at every place you go, and you say, "Oh, I really like how he did that. I really like his ministerial touch. I really like his concern." Or you can say, "Oh, I didn't really like what that one priest did, and I'm gonna do something different." But either way, every situation can be something that you can take and learn from, so you can form your own identity. So I think there's really no wasted experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, you kind of brought something in that in our CPE program, so our clinical pastoral education program that really emphasizes us when we go into the hospital setting and when we're operating as chaplains, when we're operating as pastoral administrators or pastoral ministers, developing your own style. So finding those things that you like, those things that you probably don't like so much, how others do it. But I know in our program, David, you've shared it too, that our directors and those that are around us forming us encourage that kind of personality of style. So what might work for, say, Robert might not work for David. What might work for me might not work for, say, Moses or Diego, whoever that may be. And so that intimacy of being a pastor and having that pastoral heart brings it down to learning what works for you and allowing what God can do with the gifts that he gives you.
Yeah, because like Jesus wants to work through each of us. Like it's going to be Jesus. Hopefully we're letting Jesus work through us, but he wants to work through Robert and through David and through Jordan, and that's going to look different for each of us. So I think that's really important about like forming that your own pastoral identity. And I think what Jordan mentioned, clinical pastoral education, which is usually like where a seminarian spends a summer, like an intensive summer in a hospital setting, like serving as a chaplain. I've heard a lot of seminarians say that's one of the most formative experiences that they've had, because it's really taking you out of your comfort zone. You're in a parish setting, like during our pastoral year, we get to know the people and we get to be familiar with them. But when you're like in a hospital setting with CPE, clinical pastoral education, you're often thrown into like kind of a crisis situations with people you don't even know, and you have to say like, how do I still love them like Jesus right now? How do I still be there for them? And so it really challenges and pushes us out of our comfort zones, I think.
No, absolutely. I think it's y'all have touched on something too, that there's no cookie cutter priest and there's no cookie cutter experience or formation that will make priests. I think we've all met priests in our life who are unique.
Right.
And that there's no ideal mold or ideal form, and I think that's so critical why the diocese and the vocation office here in San Antonio and the church as a whole really emphasizes those pastoral experiences. So such as doing CPE, the internship, right? To gain that wealth of knowledge, because to be a priest isn't just becoming an academic. It's not just about becoming a canon lawyer or becoming an expert at liturgy or becoming an expert that you can read Latin and Greek. That's not what makes a priest. What makes a priest is tending to the sheep. And I think that brings up a question for us all is, what priests have inspired us and given us the best examples in our lives of how to be? It doesn't have to be one person, but I mean, like I can think for myself, one example was just like what you were talking about, like doing chaplaincy ministry and just being present, and like you talked about accompaniment earlier. I remember when I was a young kid, my mother died of cancer, and the priest, it was the first moment I ever realized who a priest was. I was about 6 years old, and this guy, a weird guy, didn't know, it wasn't my family, kept showing up, and I was like, what are you doing here?
You are.
You're wearing a weird collar, and I grew up in a military household, so he was wearing some kind of uniform, and my dad, so my family had explained he was a priest, and I was like, cool. What's that? And but he was always there. I even remember distinctly. He was there at the hospital, do last rites and stuff, and then did the funeral. And he was the parish priest. He was the parochial vicar. But I distinctly remember once. I think my dad was surprised. He showed up to the funeral home when my dad was picking out the casket. And I was a little kid playing the yard, no clue what was going on, And I just remember him walking with my brother and stuff and talking. But looking back later in my life, I realized, wow, he really was going to the lost sheep. He really was reaching out. He really was. Doing these kind of, he was even at the reception. I don't know if he was invited or he just showed up. But it has always struck me that those priests who really went above and beyond, and they did a simple thing. He didn't do anything grand. He was just there, talk to. And I think he played like checkers with me or something. And I'm just gonna, I'm just saying, I won.
Nice.
I'm gonna lie to myself and say he didn't let me win. But Right. But anyways, what are some examples that in your own experience? I think that's just my.
I think there's a lot of priests that I can look to. I think, like you said, sometimes it's ones that we grew up with, and it was like over time they built that relationship, and other times it's priests that maybe I didn't get as much time with them, but they did something, or they did something or acted in a certain way that over a short amount of time they really made an impact. Mm-hmm. So I think growing up, I can think back of my pastors at St. Pius, Father Liam Brosnan, God rest his soul, and now Father Francis McHugh. They were both my pastors while I was growing up, and I just remember, that they were always consistent. That they loved us. That they I remember when I got to high school, having some hard confessions. Like they were very kind. They were very bringing the love of God. You know what I'm saying? And then when I was in college at West Point, I got to meet some, not only military chaplains, but even I had a diocesan priest who was like a parish priest who was a math teacher that was a teacher at West Point, and all of those guys made a big impact on me, whether talking to me and encouraging me about my vocation, my possible vocation, or just praying the Mass with evident fervor. Like they really believed that this was the most important thing they could be doing right now. Just to name them, just to give some shout outs, Father Gabriel Costa, my math teacher, Father Paul Halliday, who was a priest over there at West Point, and Father Ken Nielsen, who taught us he taught us some singing. He had this one phrase, because he used to be a choir director before he became a priest, and so he was trying to get the congregation involved when he first became pastor over there. So he's like, all right, I want y'all to sing. We're going to practice some singing before Mass. And he said, if God gave you a great, big, beautiful voice, use it. And if he didn't, get even. So, just those things, they stick with you, So those are some of the priests that have inspired me.
Most definitely. I think as you asked that question, Robert, I started thinking about, okay, which priest that definitely have had an impact in my life. And, we're all studying to be diocesan priests. But I look back, and a lot of the priests that I can name and kind of remember the impact that they've had in my life, I've been religious, which is beautiful that, our religious are out there representing and providing good witnesses. But, God has different things in calling to the diocesan priesthood. So some of them, Father James Wasser, he was a missionary of the Holy Family, MSF. And so he was my home pastor growing up. He's the one that pretty much was there for all of my sacraments. He has since passed, but definitely he's been an influence in my vocation and in my accompaniment of what it means to be a pastor. One of the things he would always do is he would always make himself available and always make himself present. Yeah. And so we were blessed with having him come over for Sunday dinners, him inviting us up to Missouri to visit his family and staying in touch with his family. He definitely became part of our own family. He also helped with my dad converting over to Catholicism. So he played an important role in that, in part of evangelizing, but then also his conversion process. And he's definitely been there for our family over the years. Another priest in my undergraduate days, working with the Trinitarians, so Father James Marcadame. So he was kind of one that has been a good pushing force, a good presence force, who has always been open to the Holy Spirit and what God has to offer, and encouraging that within me. And then kind of going in reverse, going backwards, another priest from my childhood, Father Wolk Holmes. He's the brother of the beloved disciple. That man is definitely a saint. You look at him and you just can't help but smiling. He himself, just his presence and his love for God. And I remember one time going to confession with him, and his pure joy at my contrition, at my confession, but also the mercy and the love that he showed on God's behalf. He was definitely a figure of being a pastor, of being one with God and showing that love of Christ.
And I think like seeing these priests, it really helps form our pastoral heart. Whether we're going to do exactly the same way as them, who knows? But we're learning from them, and it's their impact is changing us and forming us. And I think about a lot of the impact that we have on each other as brother seminarians, because the guys you enter seminary with, sometimes you're a little bit younger in formation than them. So now I can think of guys who I started seminary with, but now they're priests, and they've had a big impact on me. Like when I was on my pastoral year at Holy Trinity, Father Mike English was the vicar, and he knew what I was going through because he had done a pastoral year also. So he ended up being a really good mentor for me, and I look up to him a lot. Father Pedro Martinez from Fort Worth is another great mentor. So I think we can like point to each other and people we've gone through formation with, even guys here in this room. Like we're all forming each other. We're helping each other grow.
Right. And it's that fraternity that you talk about, not only here in the seminary, but also even outside of the seminary. You find those guys that are willing to continue to form you. And I think it kind of circles back to what we were talking about and sharing how we're not perfect. In the realistic sense, we're not perfect. We're not whole. We're not just born with all of the gifts and all of the tools of what it means to be a pastor, what it means to be a priest, but rather we're molded by the people around us.
Yeah.
One could say formed.
Exactly. We're molded. We're formed. Exactly.
And I think that's the real beauty of the pillar of pastoral formation that the church is kind of, I don't want to use the word necessarily decreed, but kind of laid out for the formation of seminarians is. And why it's such a critical element is it's needed. It's, I mean, without it, we just become, academics who, basically pray a lot, right? And I think that's, priests are so much more. They really do become, like you mentioned, part of the family and part of the extension of our lives and really kind of, like they are like kind of the father, the head of the house of that local community and really kind of build up the community and the kingdom of God. And I think it's something that, through those experiences we gain from them, through these pastoral experiences, again, like, I've done summer assignments where I've been in different parishes and gotten, same thing, like numerous examples and experiences from those priests and also from, like you, Jordan, like when I went to St. Pius X, or same thing with you, David, like what was the first thing I did is like, how's this community? How does it work? What's going on with it? And, that's something that we gain from each other and, it's just something that builds upon our own character and who we are and helps us to become better priests one day. So anyways, I went a little rambling there, but I think it's something that, this pastoral pillar is more than just being with the people or checking off X, Y, and Z. It's really gaining these experiences. And, just to kind of wrap up for those of you kind of watching, when you enter seminary, of course the academics are a big part of what we do, but during the school year you have a ministry. Right. Typically, when you first start off with something kind of light, like helping out with a life teen program or a youth program, right? Like I was actually at Holy Trinity my first year, and over the summer I got to go to Camp Covecrest with those kids.
Oh, cool.
That was kind of fun. Or working with like the nursing home. But then as you progress higher in your levels, such as we're all in theology now, then it becomes more serious. Then you get TFE, which is actually assigned by our school. And you're evaluated on how you do ministry. You get good feedback.
What is TFE? Theological Field Education.
Yeah, theological
field.
We're so
used to the acronym.
Yeah,
you have to think about it.
Theological Field Education, which is an assigned ministry, it's very similar to what some other seminaries do. But this one's Assumption's kind of unique in that we really get a lot of good feedback. And like so, I was at St. Luke's for my TFE my first year, and I was teaching children, and I'm the youngest of 4 boys, and so I never dealt with young kids, and I was like, I don't know what that thing is, get away from me. It has a high voice, it likes to play with crayons. And so I was teaching second graders, and it taught me how to work with kids and how to work with really who a lot of people say they're the future of the church. They're the president of the church. It really kind of revolutionized my way of thinking. But if I didn't have that experience, I didn't have that TFE experience, I never would have got that understanding. And so one day when I'm at a parish, let's say it has a school, I'm going to be much more well equipped to deal with that. And so, just to give you an understanding that, for those of you again listening and watching that, being a seminarian isn't just about books and about sitting in a chapel. It is about going out and being with the people and, sorry to get into a little bit of a social, societal and cultural, which is about sometimes an attack against the churches. All you do is sit in your churches and, your beautiful churches. No, we're out there in the world. The church is the largest giver of aid, largest provider of private education in the world, and we get to experience that as seminarians and later as priests. So I went on a bit of a tangent there, but I just thought something that was that we should point out that our formation is about being in the world, not about just hiding behind the walls of the seminary.
Most definitely, and I think you bring that last point that you bring up. Hiding behind the walls of the seminary. Here at Assumption, we're blessed to reside within the west side of San Antonio. Yeah. And we've kind of had those conversations and looking at our campus in comparison to some of the other seminaries around the United States, We don't have a fence, we don't have a wall, we don't have a gate, we don't have any sort of barrier that kind of divides us away from the community. So our block is a block of the seminary with the Archdiocese, but right across the street we have houses, we have parishioners, we have people who are Catholic, people who are not Catholic. The people of God, whether they're believers or not, are right there on our front step, on our doorstep. And so as San Antonio seminarians, what better way to, one, study here at Assumption, and two, have these pastoral experiences within the Archdiocese, and then being called to ministry and, God willing, being ordained as priest. We already have those grassroots. We already have those roots of formation, those connections from the different parishes that will help foster our future ministries.
And that brings up a funny story and a really good point, that because we are in the middle of the city, right? We are in touch with the world, and we are in touch with us as being Archdiocesan seminarians. This will be the diocese we will be ministering to. These are the people we will be ministering for. And so we get to live amongst them. We go to restaurants with them. We go to out walking with them. We go to Woodlawn Park or walk around. And that's an amazing and beautiful experience. I mean, you go to St. Luke's, you go to St. Anne's or St. Jude's or St. Mary's, campus has their own, church there. We get to go to Mass with these people, and we get to be with them. And, sometimes you get conversations, walking out in the morning and you're talking to one of the neighbors, right? And it's super cool. On the flip side, I'm going to give a shout out to our cameraman right now, Moses. Got bit in the ankle by a chihuahua once.
Oh, I heard about that.
So he was walking one day, and this little wild chihuahua chased him, and he got bit in the ankle. And I always thought it was a joke when they said little dogs are ankle biters, but apparently it's true. And so there's pluses and minuses to it. Not trying to scare you off. There's no packs of roaming dogs. Do a little wink.
Anymore.
But, no, I mean, it is kind of fun. You get those kind of cool stories. Or right now in our pool, we have a pool here on the campus, and there's ducks in the pool because it's hot out. And I love to hunt birds and stuff and ducks, and I'm so upset because they tempt me.
No.
But being a pastor, those are also the people I minister to. I minister to the ducks. I feed them.
Right. I had that conversation. No, it's not about ducks. I did not talk about ducks while I was on Pastoral Year. But I had that conversation with my pastor, being out in Del Rio, ministering at the two communities. He had shared with me, he's like, it gets hard sometimes because you just want to be normal. You want to be by yourself. You want to go to H-E-B. You want to go to Walmart. You want to go to the gas station. You don't want people to recognize you.
But they do.
But they do. Exactly. And I didn't believe him. When I first got there, I was the newbie into town. Del Rio, 35,000 people. I was like, they're not going to remember, this white guy that's coming in. There was an Air Force base there. I was a newbie. I was okay. I was hiding. But after about 9 months, I learned very quickly that even though if I was grocery shopping with my headphones in, somebody would always stop and be like, oh, it's so good to see you. How are you? But even though that you can be frustrated of, I just want to get my stuff and go, the beauty of the people recognizing you and seeing you as part of their community, you're in the everyday just like them, which is very beautiful.
And I think that's what's so amazing about our pastoral formation, that we get to do it here in San Antonio. There's other guys from other dioceses, and they get to do their pastoral formation here at Assumption, but they're going to have to go back to their diocese, let's say in California or Arkansas, and I'm sure they'll do fine and reintegrating themselves, but we can already start to build connections with parishes, with ministries like hospitals, like emergency children's shelters, Catholic charities. There's so many things that we're already going to experience, that we're already going to have that relationship when, God willing, we're ordained.
Yeah, because there's numerous stories of guys, because somebody's been here for 100 years, that when they were ordained about 5-10 years after they've been ordained, they all of a sudden get assigned to the parish that they did their internship at 15 years ago, or they did a summer assignment yet. And I mean, I've been to, at this point, 3 parishes, or actually, more than that, including, minor ministry. So I've been at 5 or so, and then I'll be doing my internship as well here soon. So by the time you're ordained, you've been to almost 10 parishes or 10 institutions and parishes. And that's a sizable amount, and you get connections and you build kind of a network, so to speak, of people. Because same thing with you, Jordan. I remember, going to H-E-B one day, and someone came up to me and they recognized me from a parish that I'd helped at halfway across the city. And I was like, wow. And it is cool because the shepherd, when they smell like the sheep, really do, kind of feel like part of the, sheep's. Again, I'm going back into these, not calling people sheep, but,
It's biblical language.
Yeah. The point is that, when we engage with the people, we really do experience the fullness of their lives, and they enrich us in turn. And so that's, again, the big benefit, and why we wanted to sit here and explain to you this part of formation. It's such a huge part, and it's such a critical thing that we do. And, so we really want to thank you all for joining us, and thank you for being here. And do y'all have any last comments before we go? Or?
I think maybe as we kind of like close out our session, it's definitely been a pleasure to converse with you guys, my brothers. So if we would have to say one thing that pastoral formation is, what is like the one word or the one phrase that you would sum up as pastoral formation? David?
Well, that's a hard one, but I would say, lay down your life for the sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Stanley Rother.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought you were going to talk about something else. I thought it was like a musical artist or something.
No, he was a saint who at
Rother.
one point went to the seminary and was martyred in Guatemala,
Yeah.
right? And he was famous. They said the shepherd doesn't run from his sheep, and he refused to leave, and then he was
Yeah,
he
so
was killed by them.
that's my phrase. Lay down your life for the sheep.
Robert?
I think I would just, I'm gonna have to, re-quote Pope Francis. The pastor smells like the sheep. Go and smell like the sheep. So.
How about you, Jordan?
I think for me, it's definitely that encounter and that experience. So that importance of encounter, being encountered by others, and how those encounters form us, shape us, but also the encounter of love, of the sheep that they have for us.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, thanks, everybody. It's been fun.
Yeah,
See you next time. We'll tell you more stories about Moses getting bit by a dog in the ankle, but we'll save that for our next podcast. But thanks again, and thank y'all for joining us.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks, Robert.
It's been good.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jordan.
Have fun.